All right, Doom Vivamus Vivamus Epicureans, welcome to the Marvel Epic Collection podcast, where we will read, rate, and review the Marvel Epic Collection trade paperbacks. I'm your host, Nick Smith, and I am joined by...
Stojr from Stojr's Shelf. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to this venture that we're going to engage in here. As I kind of said in that intro, right now this is just going to be an introductory episode. We're just getting to know one another. Stojr, how about you tell me a little bit about yourself? How'd you get into comics? How'd you get into the Epic collections?
Yeah, I mean, from a comic perspective, I've been collecting comics since the early 90s. I remember going to Rite Aid and picking up on my lonesome. I must have been, I don't know, 11, 12 years old, and bought Amazing Spider-Man 362, that cover with Carnage and Venom and Spider-Man, bright yellow. And, basically been hooked since then. For Christmas that year, got a box of random comic books, which I thought was a great way to jump into things because I kind of just got thrown in the middle of all of these different characters, had no idea what I was reading, and built it out from there. Over the years, I kind of stopped collecting single issues except for Amazing Spider-Man, and then shifted into these epic collections and complete collections over the last, I don't know, 5 years or so. I kind of discovered them halfway through their lifespan. I think they started about a decade ago. So those have been what I've been putting up on the shelf. And now that I have a big enough collection, I've been starting up a little channel to kind of display them and unbox them and talk about what's there. So I'm happy to dive into these and start reviewing them too, and go in even deeper into the books.
Awesome. Yeah, I think we have very similar ways that we've been brought into comics. When I was a little kid, I was one of those kids who didn't like to read, but I was super into the Ninja Turtles because that was, all the rage in the 80s. And I think my parents bought me some Ninja Turtle comics at some point, and I really enjoyed it. And I remember at some point they bought Walmart used to have these old packs of back issue comics that they collected together. And one of those had Amazing Spider-Man number 350 in it, so I kind of remember that as being my first Spider-Man comic. But then the same one you're talking about, Amazing 362, that is the first one that I bought off the shelf at Safeway at the grocery store. So I think we both entered at the same time, and I think I've had a similar trajectory. I was reading Amazing Spider-Man. Admittedly, I dropped during the Clone Saga. Middle school me, early high school, I couldn't afford to buy 4 issues every month when they were doing all the crossovers with Web and Spec. But I got back in when the Spider-Man movie came out, have been collecting the single issues of Spider-Man ever since. And yeah, for a while I was reading the Essentials trade paperbacks, but they canceled those, and I was hesitant to get on the Epic train, so I tried doing the Marvel Unlimited app, which is great, except I learned that I don't stick with a book long when I'm reading online. So a couple of years ago, I got back into started buying the Epics and reading the physicals, and that just seemed so much more satisfying.
Yeah, I love how you just get the upgraded paper quality in a lot of ways. I mean, I'm from going back and buying the single issues, right? So, as I got older, I started to fill in some of the gaps I had, right? So I didn't collect Spectacular. I didn't collect the Web of. I did get everything sort of Clone Saga forward, so I powered through that on my end. But trying to go backwards, you start to hit a point where, unless you're going to spend real money on things like, the paper's faded, the colors are faded, things like that. So when I discovered that there was like reprints in a format that was, pretty good value for the money, at least when they were initially kind of coming out.
Yeah.
You get, I know they're not storyline based, but you do kind of cover storylines in them. And you get this nice thick book of, 350 to 550 pages that is cleaned up, and you can kind of go back and really appreciate the storytelling and the art from that era. So how many have you gotten so far? Like, do you have, a favorite character that you've gotten all of the epic lines? Do you kind of sample? What's your collection look like?
So I started getting into the epics mostly because I remember when I was reading the Essentials, I really loved the Jack Kirby art in Thor. And when I was reading the Essentials, they're all in black and white, and I was thinking, gosh, what am I missing out on with them not being in color? That was, oh gosh, I don't know, 20 years ago, showing my age here. And so a couple years ago, I started thinking about that. It's like, I really want to read those Jack Kirby Thor issues in color. So I started with Thor, and I was really just going to start with that, but I got so engaged with it and found my love of comics again that I just started collecting all the ones I could. And I decided, you know what, if I'm going to be a sicko about this and collect everything, I need to be a little strategic. The Conan books, Marvel had lost the license, and I figured, okay, I need to snatch up all those that I could, so I got those. Same with Master of Kung Fu, so I started getting them. And before you know it, I was just down the rabbit hole of just getting whatever I could. I knew I wanted to get Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, and the X-Men, but then anyone that was hard to find that I happened to find for a decent price, I just went and grabbed. So at this stage, aside from epics that are not printed, I think I've got just about all except for maybe 50 of them. Mostly related to, Iron Man, Daredevil, Captain America. Those are the big ones where I have gaps, but I've got most of the other ones.
That's great. Yeah, I think there's like somewhere in the neighborhood of 400, 450. I know the Epic Collection Wikipedia page is really well kept, so the total numbers there are somewhere. So it's a big chunk. For me, I love the idea of not only going back and seeing that art that I talked about earlier and being able to see that, but kind of the idea of like a full run of something,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then once I was able to, see an opportunity to get a full run of something, that's where I jumped on it, right? So I've been, collecting Amazing Spider-Man single issues since 361, and I went back a little bit, and probably, have 50 or so issues before that, but that paper quality and degrading of things kind of, pushed me away from it. So what I started to do was, look at the different characters there were and get those epic collections from the beginning. So I was able to get Amazing Spider-Man, and then I sort of noticed that hey, there was some deals on some Fantastic Four ones, so I was able to plug that whole gap with Fantastic Four. Then I was like, oh, I'm just going to get the X-Men books. So I got the X-Men title, and then all of a sudden New Mutants. I was like, well, I never read New Mutants, and I was able to pick those all up, or X Factor, or X Force, and before you know it, all of these characters that I was interested in starting, I ended up having these full runs on. And I think what's interesting is, by being part of the community, either on the Facebook group, on Curtis's podcast, on Omar's YouTube streams, things like that, you start to get in the know and connect it to different people where, a lot of these books I bought on Facebook Marketplace a lot cheaper than, retail. And if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have been able to get a lot of these runs that I had because while they do reprint them, they don't reprint every single volume all the time. So.
Yeah, and it sure seems like the reprints have been slowing down. At least what Curtis Finley has been saying in his podcasts, and it sure seems like it too. We used to get a couple reprints a year, and now it's like one or two. And yeah, I agree with the community thing. I stumbled into a full run of the Hulk Epic collections because someone was selling them cheap on Facebook. There's also on Reddit, there's a subreddit Comic Swap, and you'll often be able to find some good deals there too. Not always. I feel like the good deals are starting to slow down a little bit, but that might also be because I've built up such a large connection that there's a collection. There's only a few issues or volumes left that I really need. I suppose, we brought up the community and Curtis Finley a couple of times here. I think it might be worth noting that parts of the inspiration for doing this read and review podcast is because of him and his Epic Collection. No, wait. Marvel Epic Podcast. That was the name of Curtis's podcast, which he still does on YouTube. He does a lot of unboxing videos of new things. He's usually the guy that has the news on the new epics that come out. But a few years ago, he used to do an audio podcast where he would have guests on and they would read individual issues and comment on them, get some of the background of the artists and the writers and so forth. And I loved listening to those, particularly on my long commute to work. But unfortunately, it's been a couple of years since he's done that. And I think that then has been the inspiration for us to get together and do this, is there's a void to fill, right? To do that work of reading through these things, looking into the background of them. I don't know if we're going to be able to do as well or as thorough of a job as Curtis has done, but at least that's kind of my aspiration for this. What do you think, Stoger?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think so. I actually never really listened to those podcasts, and I think that's just a symptom of COVID, right? So, when I was getting into this world, my commute was canceled during that time. 5 years ago, it was COVID time frame. So I was much more ingrained into the YouTube unboxings, the releases, and very much so on like the hey, here's what's going to come out in the next 6 months or the next year, those types of things. That's really what got me hooked. 'Cause I thought it was so interesting to be able to, kind of go through this like slideshow and say, okay, well, here's a book that's not going to come out for another year, but now it's on the radar. Let's drum up that excitement that him and Omar do. So yeah, I mean, for me, setting up this channel, kind of doing the things that I'm trying to do on Stoger Shelf, which is a little bit more all encompassing. I have a TikTok channel that I started a month ago, and when I started that, I told myself that I wasn't going to be on camera. So here I am on camera, doing things. I kind of stick to those stuff.
You can
But
blame
I've
me
been
for
doing.
that one. I feel like I strong armed you into this.
No, no, it's all good. So I'm doing, so I do some unboxings there and some things like that. And I linked up with Curtis, and he's followed me on that channel. So it's been very encouraging from that standpoint. But yeah, I'm eager to start, going more long form with that, right? TikTok's been a little bit easier, to just do like a quick 3-minute video. I've been learning how to do all that stuff, but I really want to like dive into just kind of sharing the knowledge that I have, or accumulated, or learn new things by talking to different people in the community about particular issues. And I think like reviewing the books, and kind of diving into the actual stories in the books, that we're going to be able to do here, and bouncing ideas off each other, is going to work out well.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Well, on that note, what are we starting with? What's going to be our first book?
So I think we're gonna cover that volume, actually two epics in one, because we're gonna cover the volume that we both talked about that covers the origin of Carnage and then Maximum Carnage. So that's going to be Carnage Born in Blood, which is that book right there, as well as the Amazing Spider-Man Volume 25, Maximum Carnage. Now, these two books are almost identical. The
Yeah.
only differences between these two books rather, is as I get a group chat thing come up and distract me, and I say the word group instead of book. The only difference between these two books is that Born in Blood Carnage jumps around a little bit. So it gives you the origin of Carnage over the 3 issues and the little teaser material before that. And then the full Maximum Carnage crossover. And then it ends with the Amazing Spider-Man Annual 28, which is a little bit of a Carnage comes back thing. Whereas the Amazing Spider-Man one is more in chronological order. So it doesn't have the origin of Carnage. It covers all of Maximum Carnage, and then has a what were they called? There were these uh, original graphic novels or something like that back in the day. The
I
but
think it
it's
was just
Punisher, Spider-Man, and Sabretooth, designer jeans. So it was a like a $6 book in the 90s that was, I think, didn't have any ads back then, and was released in there.
yeah. I don't know if that was just straight up called a one shot because I think the heyday of the uh, graphic novel might have. Well, I don't. Who?
Yeah.
I'm actually looking at this. This was a $9 book. It was $8.95, which
Oh
back
wow.
back in the '90s that was a significant chunk of change. Um, so okay, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, they're almost nearly identical. But we'll start next week with that. I think maybe not the wisest business move to start with Carnage of all characters, but we both have this connection of Carnage being one of our first books really
Yeah,
is
absolutely.
that era. So I think that's important for us. Um, let's see. Following the first Carnage volume, we're then going to jump into Craven's Last Hunt. Will be the next volume, right? Um,
Yeah, that's probably one of my high recommendations of like if you're like looking to get 80s Spider-Man. I mean, there's not really a better volume that's out yet, for 80s Spider-Man than that.
yep. So I think that's going to be the goal. I think this is going to be an every other week thing. But
Yeah, that's the goal.
yep, that's the goal. We're both humans with regular lives and jobs and families, so things may not be as regular as that, but I think that's going to be our goal. And I think when we record that first episode, Maximum Carnage, if we get an audience here, we might pull you, see where we go after Craven's Last Hunt. Or we'll come up with our own and start a poll for in the future. But if anyone happens to capture this video, you want to follow along, that's where we're going next.
Awesome.
All right, Stoger, any final thoughts?
No, I'm really looking forward to this. I want to dive into some of these books. I mean, I buy these books to read, not and to collect, not for resale value or anything like that. And there is a huge amount of books behind me that I have not read cover to cover. I flipped through them all. I'm aware of what stories are baked in there, but really kind of pushing through and reading some of those things, and making the time, is going to be a great thing.
Yep, I'm right there with you. Although every other week is not going to, they put one of these things out about once a week, it seems, or like four a month, something. So who knows? Maybe we'll find a way to go a little bit faster in the future once we get our feet under us. But at the very least, every other week now, that's what we'll cover on the podcast anyway.
Sounds good.
All right, great. Well, once again, I'm Nick Smith, joined by Stoger Shelf. Stoger, any social media you want to promote?
Just Stojr Shelf on YouTube and TikTok. So without the apostrophe, just doing some unboxing. My YouTube channel is a little raw right now because I haven't kind of figured out all the mechanics of it, but trying to post on TikTok a couple times a week with different things. I'm also covering more than just Marvel Epic collections there. So I'm basically interested in anything that's a thick trade. So DC Finest, Marvel Epic collections, complete collections. And omnibuses, although they're not my preferred reading format, if it gets me to fill in that gap in the collection, I have those too.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm looking up here. I got a couple omnibuses just because I'm not convinced they're going to come out in anything else like the DC Marvel crossover and the cross gen stuff. I loved cross gen when that came out in the 2000s. But all right. If you want to follow me, I do have a Blue Sky account. It's Dr. Smith History on Blue Sky, so DRSMITH History. I'm a history teacher, hence why that handle. And then just this channel. All right. Well, I think we might aim for coming back next week. If not, you know what? Check the YouTube channel. Check Blue Sky. We'll have things up there saying when we're going to meet together. And until next time, happy reading, and I hope it will be epic.
Thanks, guys.